Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Cross and welcome to A Feminine Moment. I am here with Dixie Andelin Forsyth and her sister, Kristine Andelin
Hales with an S.
Hales with an S. I knew I was going to get that wrong, sorry.
Okay.
And we're going to be talking about femininity and feminine power. And earlier today I posted about the pro-feminine movement, so I thought that this would really kind of meld well with your questions from yesterday and follow up to that. So if you have any questions, comments, feel free to post below and we will address those in future videos. So, all right, ladies, take it away. Tell us about feminine power.
Okay, how's it contrast to masculine power?
Yes.
Okay, when you look in the dictionary under power, when I did on Wikipedia, the only definition that came up was basically masculine power, which is the use of overt control, persuasion, leverage, either through persuasion or money, or brute force, like as in armies and things like that. And you know, I think Donald Trump wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. I haven't read that book, but it sounds like total masculine power, and it works in the field that it's meant to work for. But what is left out totally is feminine power, and it's so much so that I think most women don't even know what it is. Maybe sometimes we sense it, but we don't understand the power. But the power of our feminine influence is just as great, if not sometimes can even trump, pardon the pun, masculine power. At times it can even trump masculine power. But the difference is that it's more through influence and getting people, not getting people, but influencing people to want to change through our own example. As in the case of, say, Mother Teresa or Princess Diana, people being such an influence by our example on people that they not only change, but that kind of power, feminine power, can have an effect for generations, whereas masculine power doesn't tend to last. And it's not manipulative. And now we're not dissing masculine power.
Feminine power.
Feminine power, when used in its appropriate way, is not manipulative. And the difference between manipulation and good psychology is intent. And women are, there's more women that are blessed with good intentions. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I would.
We tend to be the more empathetic. We tend to worry about how people feel. We tend to worry about our children, our descendants, and things like that. And so if you want to be happy today, and you can learn to understand feminine power in your own home, with your family, and with your loved ones, and you can make such a difference that you will be loved for generations.
You know, I think of the influence, when we think of power as being an influence, it's extremely penetrating. There's no place that it does not touch. And so we have the capacity to really change the world in a better way, in a very, well, maybe you should say delicate. Yeah, subtle and delicate way, but it's extremely powerful.
Even dainty.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with those words. Nothing wrong with those words. And they're made to seem insipid today. And we need to reclaim them. There's nothing wrong with them when used with our gender.
Thank you.
Men don't wear that well, but women do. And women don't wear masculine power well. It comes off looking kind of harsh.
Well, usually they're called a name.
Oh, it starts with a B?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard executive women complain and say, how come when a man does something, they get called assertive and proactive, and we just get called the B word?
Right.
We don't wear masculine power well. And you know what? It doesn't work that well for us.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work for us. It works for them. And if we can understand our own feminine power base, we'd be much happier, we'd be much more influenced, and you can actually be quite a force to reckon with in your own world, if not necessarily the entire world.
Well, I think, and also when you understand the differences, takes away that competitiveness that you feel,
Right.
because you within yourself feel the influence that you have. There's certain things that matter to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think women tend to be, or they can be very intuitive about the way they do that, but we feel things, we sense things, and we allow that influence to come from us in a flowing way. I look at my femininity as a playground for how I get to express myself.
And it feels
Which is
good.
yeah.
Masculine power doesn't feel good for us, but feminine power feels great.
I thank you so much. That is great. Can you give us some examples of how feminine power would present itself? Maybe in a relationship scenario, and even female relationships, or in the workplace. What does feminine power look like?
Okay, there's so many variables to it.
Yeah.
In the workplace, I have an example that was sent in recently, without using names or anything. There was a young woman who recently got a job working for an executive.
Mm-hmm.
And he was high powered, and everyone was scared to death of him. He was a CEO, and she was hired as an assistant, and he was gruff and rough. And one of her jobs was she had to fly him, get him airline tickets, and fly him out from one place to another for some meetings or something. And he got really mad when he saw that she had allowed 45 minutes for him to get to the airport, I think. And he blew up and said, "Why do I need blankety blank, this many minutes?" And she had used Fascinating Womanhood principles at home with her husband, but she hadn't realized that it was also part of her, and she could use them as a woman at her work. And she just said, "Oh, I was so worried about you being rushed or even late to your plane. I just would feel so bad if you missed your plane or you had to rush too hard. I was so worried about you." And the other people around said that no one had ever heard him use the word please and thank you, let alone in the same sentence. But he softened immediately. They didn't know that he was capable of softening. And that's all she did. She said, I was so worried about you. And he said, "Well, I think we could maybe chop off 15 minutes of that. If you would do that, please, I would appreciate it. Thank you."
Wonderful.
And so that's an example of feminine influence
Yes.
in the workplace. The other thing she would have gotten is if she fought him, he would have gotten angry with her, or she would have just cried, neither of which is a desirable outcome. So
Nice example.
That's an example in the workplace, and the similar things can happen at home. Instead of say your husband does something that is thoughtless or insensitive, which happens because people are human. If you're able to respond with childlikeness, which people don't understand, that we've got to do more on childlikeness.
Well,
childlikeness is a definite feminine influence and power, because it can diffuse. What power is that you can diffuse a potentially explosive situation? Sometimes people haven't talked to each other for days over something that they don't even remember at the end of it what caused it, something relatively small.
So true.
And that's a power that women have. Now, there's a masculine childlikeness that men sometimes intuitively kind of figure out, but women have such a great influence and power with this. We're natural at it.
I've got an example of penetrating influence and how it could be done in a feminine way.
Okay.
I had a son, and I have to admit this, I was trying to influence him in a certain direction. And I was, as a mom, sometimes we pass over, where the apron strings probably should have been cut because he was 40. And, I just started.
Maybe there was just a thread.
Yeah. Yeah. So I I could sense this resistance. Okay. So that means, you know, the influence that you have is hitting a brick wall. And so, but it doesn't mean that you don't have it. And it doesn't mean there isn't a way that you can't open that up again. So I went home and I wrote on a little card that I looked at every single day. And it says, I am watching patiently as someone creates from their own heart. I'm meeting my son. And
Beautiful.
within 2 weeks, he did a complete reversal of that. Now, I didn't really.
Without saying a word to him.
Without, yeah. Well, the interesting thing was, is he said, Mom, when did I showed him that card about 2 years later? And he says, when did you write that card? And I happened to have the date down. And he goes, I can't believe it. He says, 2 weeks after you wrote that card, I was sitting with my wife in bed and we started talking about the possibilities that you had introduced to me. And we completely changed. See, he felt my influence 2,000 miles away because I shifted what my heart was. So it isn't, female power has more to do with what we have inside of us that comes out and flows. And when we use it, life flows back to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we release that fight that we feel in life. Yes.
The room or even the state picture.
Yeah.
Oh, chills all over my body on that one. Thank you so much. It's beautiful. Beautiful. Both of you. Those examples are amazing. So we have part 2 coming up on childlikeness for sure. And then maybe part 3 on masculine power and talking more about the masculine characteristics, because I know I touched on this yesterday. A lot of us haven't even been taught about what that looks like. And
the masculine power is not a negative. We need it.
Oh, yeah.
Protect us. We need it to build buildings and countries and roads and all that stuff. We need this kind of power, but it's not for us. We don't wear it well, and it's not the source of our greatest influence.
And I think it's important for us to understand what it is and what it looks like. So if we're going to understand men, it's a really important piece of that, understanding men, and looking to his better side. So anyway,
appreciating
yes.
The things that matter to him. If, it's very masculine for them to express masculine pride, protection for one. And when we appreciate that, they feel much more appreciated because it's exactly what they feel about themselves.
Good point. And before we wrap up, I do have a question just came in. If you guys will answer this. She says, I've read about Mrs. Andelin's bright side sense of humor. For example, I recall reading that she was walking across the floor with a big bowl of spaghetti and dropped it. I remember reading this, and instead of being upset, started laughing at how ridiculous it must have looked to have spaghetti everywhere. Can any of you speak a little about the character trait of hers and how it positively impacted you?
Oh, well, it was a character trait kind of on that side of the family.
Yeah.
It wasn't just her. She told us a story about, I know it sounds so ridiculous to me because I hate heat, excessive heat, but she grew up in Arizona, and one time she said they were driving out, and it was in the days there weren't a lot of paved roads. Most roads were dirt. And they ran out of gas in the middle of the desert, and it was summer. And I thought, oh my gosh, you could die out there. And she said it was so ridiculous. The whole family got out of the car, and they started laughing so hard at the ridiculousness of their situation that they had tears rolling down their face. They just knew they were going to be, they'd figure it out, that they would be rescued. They just thought this is so ridiculous. Whereas my dad's side of the family would be like, this is the end of the world.
Yeah.
That was.
Well, speaking of spilled spaghetti, I remember I was visiting my mom once, and my daughter, she worked probably for 20 minutes. My daughter was in the high chair at this time, was that age, worked about 20 minutes to make this, homemade baby food that was all these carrots. So she steamed them perfectly, she ground them up, and she handed my daughter this whole bowl. And the first thing she did is took it and she tipped it upside down on her head. She laughed then too.
I love that. No, is that a primarily a feminine characteristic? I'm just curious.
It Yeah, it's very feminine. It's feminine to be positive. And
Yeah.
she believed in that. And I know one time she laughed about this. She was babysitting my brother's kids for a few days, and she went to all this work to make this homemade soup, vegetables and stuff. And she got the kids around the table, and they said, "Grandma, can't you make this taste canned?" She laughed and said, "Okay, that's the last time."
It didn't have enough salt in it, probably, or MSG.
They wanted that cheap canned taste. Yes, but anyway.
You know, I think the sense of humor is evidence of you know, the femininity part.
Yeah.
Because when we have this femininity and we realize our power and we allow life to flow through us and to us, then we don't feel that sense of threat all the time. And so we can just relax and we can enjoy life in and of itself. And, you know, addressing bad situations with laughter, I mean, that's an influence, isn't it? It's a huge influence.
Our mother's mother was known to be real optimistic, and my dad came from more of a fear family. He used to say during his lifetime that when he died and went on the other side, the first person he wanted to see was his mother-in-law. Because she just believed in people. And he felt good being around her because she believed in people and she was optimistic. And that's what all people like, let alone men.
That's a great point. Let's end it there then. Thank you for answering that question at the end. It's been great seeing you guys today, and everybody watching, please comment below, like and share, and be talking about the pro-feminine movement, and also fascinatingwomanhood.com. Go ahead, Dixie.
And women are the gatekeepers of civilization.
Yep.
Don't ever forget.
Yeah. Yes, you have immeasurable power and worth. And don't forget it. And if you ever do forget it, come here and share your frustration, and we will encourage you and remind you of how valuable you are and how much you're loved and how much we need you out there shedding your light around, right? That's from Helen's book.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you later. I'll be in touch. Bye-bye.